Growing vegetable seeds inside. G'day folks, Greg here from Small Space Produce. I love this time of year, starting our vegetable seeds, and we can start them a little bit early even though they're not ready to go outside, and we can do them inside. But there are good ways to do it and there are bad ways to do it. And I know you might find 1,000,001 videos saying you can do it this way and that way, and a lot of those ways will work, but we like to do it the very best way from the very beginning. So we really maximize the amount of our seeds that take and therefore get them into the garden. But first of all, what are the benefits of doing it this way? Number one, costs. I know there is a little bit of outlay to get your first setup, but you can use that over and over again. So that will pay for itself over time. And when you compare the cost of a little bag of seeds compared to buying a punnet of already grown little vegetables ready to go, the cost difference is vast, of course, and you just get hundreds of seeds, so much cheaper than you will a few seedlings. So even though there might be a bit of an investment, just consider that investment will pay for itself over time. Now, we also love the fact that we can grow things at the right time, but also we can stagger the time that we grow our seeds. So instead of sort of growing all of one thing at once, and then you harvest them all and then they're gone, we can stagger that. So we start some, get them in, then start the next one. So by the time we're harvesting them, these ones are ready to go in. Takes a little bit of planning, but it means you can just extend the growing season, essentially the amount of time that you get produce. So look, we're going to show you our setup today and how we do it every single year, and any little tips and tricks that we've learned along the way, and hopefully that might inspire you to do exactly the same. So first of all, when we look at seeds and what they need to actually start, what says, hey, it's time for me to grow, there's a couple of factors. There's heat is probably the main one, to be honest. It's not so much light to start off with. Heat is our main one. And the second thing is the substrate that we're growing the seed in. The third thing is planting the seed the right way. If you get those things right, then you should get seeds sprouting very easily, and then the light kicks in to help with the root growth after that. So absolutely, without grow lights, you could grow. Some plants will certainly take, and if you get them straight into the sun as soon as they start shooting up, then they'll do absolutely fine. But we prefer to keep them in one spot, get them sprouting, get them stable, and then get them into the yard from there. So first of all, let's talk about heat. For most of our plants, they need a trigger to say that it's time to grow. They don't want to spring up at the wrong time. And so it's not so much the heat coming from the top, I mean that can help, but it's the temperature of the soil is what will tell that seed, hey, now is the time for me to start growing. So what we use, really basic propagation heat mats like this one here. Okay, so I've got a couple already lined up here behind me. We have another hole set up over here. So what I'm showing you here, we're going to have double of this year, and we're not using a lot of space. This is sort of our little dog room, and also a place where we dry our clothes, believe it or not, when it gets a bit chillier. And we keep our setups as simple as we possibly can, but something like this is crucial. You can keep a room warm, of course, but something like this will get your soil up to the right temperature and just let those seeds know that they are good to go. So, I mean, working out how many you need, but we'd certainly suggest, if you can, a couple of propagation mats. You'll find them online really easily. Maybe just have a look at a few reviews and make sure you are getting a decent one that's not too hot or not too cold. And most of them do have just a slightly sort of waterproof layer on them. So if there is a little bit of drippage, it's not the end of the world. Now, the second thing we're going to need, of course, is some little pots to grow our seeds in. Now, you've got so many different choices for what you go for here. What we personally like are actually long, deep pots. And I know that's not probably everyone's cup of tea because you do use more substrate. But what we really love here is it allows the roots to get really deep, and then when we plant them, they can be nice and deep. So if we're saving space and we're using self-watering planters, for example, and those roots are going to reach the bottom quicker, and that procedure can begin. Or if we are in a garden bed and lucky enough to have a raised garden bed, having those roots a little bit deeper, when we give the garden bed a really good saturation, then we can utilise the depth of that, because the water down the bottom of the garden bed, of course, won't evaporate as quickly, and the plant's got a bit more time to suck that up. And even though it can be a bit chilly here over winter time, in summer it gets quite hot and quite windy. So we've just found that ours do really, really well with these, but you do sacrifice, of course, a little bit more of the substrate to plant the seeds. So then, of course, you're going to need something to hold all of your pots, and I've got to do this without spilling them everywhere. Okay, but just a nice little basic seed tray like this one. Look, the only thing that annoys me with these pots is they don't sit up quite straight, so I wind up jamming a few things in the side to hold them up. But that's just really nice and neat. And one of these heat mats behind me here will hold 2 of these. So essentially we can do 4 trays over here and 4 on our second setup, and we are absolutely set. Okay, so some sort of a seed tray and holder, and of course maybe trying to maximise your space on your propagation mat, and measuring those may just be worthwhile. Okay, so what do we then use to grow the seed in? Now, a really common mistake is grabbing something like just our garden soil or potting mix to grow our seeds in. And look, that will work in some cases, but we want something a lot lighter for seeds, essentially. It's going to work a lot better, something that retains a bit of moisture but allows itself to breathe. And this is where your seed raising mix or cutting mix that you'll find at most nurseries is absolutely worth investing in. And you know, we just find the difference that makes to our plants starting is absolutely sensational. So we would certainly advise to get some seed raising mix or some cutting mix, it might be called, so you can start your seeds. All right, so the next thing that we need, we've got our heat, we've got our pots, we've got our seed raising mix that we've topped up. Look, it is slow and tedious when we're just filling up each of those little pots one by one with our seed raising mix. And look, that's how I did it for years, to be honest. And then step in my dear wife, who has a much bigger brain than me, who said, why don't we just do it this way? And I'll just share with you now the way that she fills them, because I know it's unique, it's quick, and we love saving time wherever we can. So here's a quick clip from a couple of days ago of her filling the seed raising little pots. Not only are we passionate about growing things in small spaces, but we're also passionate about saving time wherever we can. And anyone who has sat here and filled these things one by one by one will know that it's rather painful. Step in Melissa, the dear wife, who I've always mentioned, will always come up with a way to save time. Daphne in the background I should have introduced. I'm surprised she's not here trying to eat and steal the pots. And of course we've already discussed the importance of a really good cutting mix, and we've got a good bag of that here. So what Melissa's got set up here is a tub, essentially. I'm sure you've got one of these lying around. And that way, when she shows you her method in a moment and she's pouring all of these in one hit, any bits that fall through, you catch it and reuse it. So I'll let you do the demo. All right, so the key is you can see that those sit really nicely there inside the bottom of that tub. And make sure they're all upright, nice and sturdy. Okay, and then pour that cutting mix on top. Look at that for lazy Greg's gardening. Absolutely perfect. Okay, and then just spread those ones out over all the pots, and you've filled out heaps of them in one go. And when you've got 6 or 7 trays of this to fill, that is much faster than doing them one on one. Okay, but what you'll probably see too when you lift them, give them a bit of a shake, and there's Doody making an appearance. Sometimes you're going to see a few gaps appear, and you can see Melissa's there's just brushing off all the excess stuff into the tub, and that's been kept. Good shake about, make sure it's all settled, because you don't want it compact, but you do want it to not be too light and fluffy either. So absolutely perfect, exactly what we need. All right, so you can see that is much quicker, much easier. You don't waste any of the mix, and who wouldn't do it that way, given the opportunity? Let's be honest, I could have saved years of my life if she had come along earlier and shown me that trick. All right, the next stage of our setup is light. Now, why is light important? For some seeds, it doesn't actually matter that much. Some seeds will just take off almost anywhere, to be honest. But if you imagine once they sprout, so that soil temperature is correct, that encourages the seeds to basically start their journey. What the light will do is then help them to develop, and that's obviously a really important stage. So you want those roots to start growing and really taking off, as well as those little tops, so they can grow a little bit and then capture more of that UV light. And of course, you can't just use any old light. You do need to get your hands on a grow light. So many different shapes, so many different sizes, so many different qualities. We have invested in decent grow lights because we use them an absolute heap. So I think ours cost us about 160 bucks. So it will, that's Aussie dollars. So that will certainly set you back a bit, but you don't need to spend that much. Ours are also quite long, as you're about to see. So you can certainly get cheaper ones, but again, just look at your reviews. Don't get done by one that claims to be a UV light and is just hopeless. Get a proper grow light that's really going to help get your seeds started. And look, again, it's an investment, but you're going to save that in tenfold over time if you go through it and grow lots of your own delicious fresh veggies. So again, we keep a nice simple setup, which I'm going to show you here. I'll just get the chair out the way. Okay, so here's one of our lights that's obviously turned off, so you can see it's quite long. Just a really nice simple light. It does come with a couple of holders here, so you could attach them to the roof and sort of hang them. But look, we just keep our stuff as simple as we possibly can, and so step in the good, honest brick pile. Look, what I love about bricks is you can just lower them, make them higher, make them lower wherever you need to. They don't really cost anything. You can get your hands on bricks all over the place. And they're fine for holding our grow lights. So that's simply our setup. We've got a waterproof bench. If it wasn't, I'd probably just lay a towel down under there. Even though it won't get drenched, I'd still lay a towel down. We've got our heat mats there as well, and then our bricks. So we're going to just place that light on there like that. Okay, I haven't sort of lined this all up as yet, and we'll plug that in and you'll see something beautiful very, very shortly. Oh, I just love that look. I just love it. I know it's going to flare out the camera, but I just love it. It gets me excited just seeing it. And as mentioned before, then we can just sit these little fellas under there, and they're going to do absolutely beautifully. I've got one more there. All right, so that's just such a nice, easy little setup to have there. And as I mentioned, with a couple of them, you'll be amazed how many things we can grow here. So, look, you could use your windowsill, absolutely. As long as it got enough heat and the room was warm enough and there was enough sunlight, that would absolutely work. So if you just want to have a crack at that, go for it. But if you want to do it the right way, this is certainly what we would suggest as your setup. Now, just a couple more little tips and tricks that I want to share with you before we wrap up today. So the first one is get yourself a sprayer. Okay, so when you're watering these seeds, you don't want to compact the soil too much and be pouring huge amounts of water on and having it leaking everywhere. Okay, so if you get yourself a nice little sprayer, look, the ones that you they drive me insane. They break all the time, and your hand will fall off. So we've got these wonderful little ones. They plug in. Again, cost us about 30 bucks, but we use them loads. They plug in and they've got a battery, so you can fill them up and just lazy, I know, but they work really, really well for watering seeds where you're not going to compact the soil too much and you're not going to make a mess everywhere. So that's certainly one tip that we would most definitely give you. The next tip that we would give you is to make sure that you get your labels and you plan what you want to plant. So you can just buy packs of those little white labels. You can use icy pole sticks, all sorts of things. And what we tend to do is we actually lay them out in our pots first. Okay, so we'll start at the back and say tomato and whatever type the tomato is, and say we want to do 6 of those. We count 6, and then we put our next one and say, okay, cherry tomato, Tiny Tim it might be. We count 6 of those, and then we do our next one. So what we're left with is a completely labelled set of pots with their seed cutting mix in, ready to go to receive their seeds. And that way there's no doubt as to what's growing where, because trying to remember afterwards is a nightmare. So a little bit of planning early is absolutely worth doing. And look, I think the other tip, it's a bit of a hard one. A lot of people will plant double the seeds to start off with and then thin them. Oh, look, we're not great at that. Every seed that sprouts, we feel like it deserves its chance of that life. So, look, we sort of overplant a bit, I guess. So sometimes we'll just do one seed, particularly if it's a bit of a precious seed in each pot, and just see how it goes. And other times we'll actually thin them and replant them just because I don't know. We just get very attached to them very quickly. They're like part of the family. But of course, if you want to maximize your space and you're a bit sure, then plant a couple, but be prepared to rip the heart and soul out of one that isn't doing as well as the other, and then you should guarantee, hopefully, that each pot does produce for you. And last but certainly not least is have a read of the instructions on each of the packets, because look, as a general rule, you want to have a look at the seed and you want to plant the seed twice the width into the soil. You know, so essentially look at the seed, double it, plant it that deep, and then put sort of a light layer on, either sprinkle it over or gently spread it over. Okay, but look, you're still going to get them sprouting, but you can sort of see with some of them which way is up and which way is down. So just consider that when you plant them. And keep in mind, some may have special instructions. I know when we grow our Australian natives, some of them we have to smoke first or soak first or all sorts of different things. Not many vegetables you have to do that, but things like strawberries. Lots of people try to grow strawberries from seed and then they're really disappointed when just one or two sprout, when you have to chill them first. So I've actually got some in the freezer right now that have been there for a couple of weeks. And what we should see is much better germination from them, because when we warm them up, they say, right, winter's over, and off we go. So just have a look. You'll learn really quickly which seed does what. Okay, so they're just lots of little tips that we've learned over the years to have a really simple, basic setup like this, but really grow maximum produce. And look, as this season grows and these are doing really nicely, we'll be sure to obviously show you where they land and any more tips we have from going from this stage to the next stage in the garden. We've got a couple more weeks before frost and stuff will finish here, so we'll have them really nicely started in here. They'll be off to a wonderful little kicker, and then we can get them out there and having a crack. So folks, hopefully this has been a little bit helpful for you as well. As always, if you've got any questions, please do feel free to pop them down in the comments below, and we certainly endeavour to answer those for you to the best of our knowledge. But otherwise, get yourself a setup and get into it. It is so satisfying growing them from seed. There's just this extra bit of achievement as compared to buying them in their little punnets, and we hope to hear lots of stories of success from you very soon. So this has been Greg from Small Space Produce and growing vegetable seeds inside.